Look at you with your little guns.
Huh?
Look at you, your little guns.
Oh. Ooh, yeah.
Ooh yeah!
Oh yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the movie Battleground. I am your host for today, Robert Parker, here in the hosting chair because our usual host and head of movie Battleground is in this match. We have two amazing competitors, including the one that I just spoiled, but this is going to be a great match. I'm really looking forward to it. We got some great questions to debate. Let's just go right to the competitors, see how they're feeling. I already spoiled it, but Aaron, the head of movie Battleground, how you feeling, man?
Don't feel bad about spoiling it. If anybody read the title of the video, they know exactly who's playing. Um, it's good to be here. This is way less fucking stressful than what you're doing, Robert. I'm sorry in advance. Also, I'm really excited to play this match because this was supposed to happen a while ago, and then because of my job, I had to drop out of the match, and Henry went on and got a knockout in that victory against Drake Fromsdorf. So I'm excited that it's come back to this match, and also that, there's some real stakes for this match. The winner of this match gets put on a track to, if they can keep winning, then they get closer and closer to getting that title shot. So I definitely look forward to not being that person today. I am not feeling confident at all. Let's do this.
Alrighty, and Aaron, you are facing one of the more competitive members of this league, and you heard him cackling in the background, everybody. Let's go over Henry Confidential. How you feeling, man?
This is going to be a fun one because it was supposed to be a triple threat behind the scenes, and now it's down to two, so that's fun. And as you guys may or may not know, me and Aaron have this weird, interesting relationship / competitive, whatever you want to call it. So it's either going to be really friendly or really heated. So I'm definitely curious to see how that's going to go. And I'm still a little salty over my one loss. So let's
Let's just say we respect the fuck out of each other, but we also can hate each other when it comes to it.
Alrighty, and that is very true here. So,
definition of love-hate.
Exactly.
Right. And hey, once, I'm not the one that handed out the controversial defeat.
Yeah.
Can't hate me for that one.
Yeah, they already referenced it, but my job is today to judge the questions, the rounds. I have a giant notebook, as always, of all of the points that they say. I'm judging based off of creativity, facts, and passion, but also it is a debate show, so it's not just about who picks the best option. It's about who can defend their option the best and who can attack the other person's option the best. So that is how I'm judging these matches. We do have 4 main round questions, and if we get to it, we'll explain the speed round rules later. But in the main round, we're going to have a introduction period where the competitors are each going to have a chance to individually introduce their option and a few main points. Then we'll have an open forum of 5 minutes. I almost messed that up, but it's a 5-minute open forum period where they are just going to shout over each other for the entire time, and then there will be closing arguments where each competitor will get a chance to individually close their argument, and then I will make my ruling. Throughout the match, each competitors have one extension where they call it before the round starts, and the open forum period will extend by 1 minute. So each person does have a 1-minute extension throughout the round. Other than that, I think I hit everything. Any questions from you two before we start?
Nope.
Perfect. All right. So we are going to hop right into it. Question 1 today. What is the best movie about magic? What is the best movie about magic? Aaron, we are starting with you first whenever you are ready.
All right. Everybody get your what the fucks ready. So the movie that I'm going with...
What the fuck? Oh, sorry.
Not quite, Robert. Not quite. The movie... Also, if I lose, I'm calling bias, by the way. I can do that now. I'm a competitor.
Finally.
No, but the movie that I'm going with is Harry Potter, specifically Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And the reason that I'm going with that question is because the specific question is best movie about magic. And I think Harry Potter is as a whole, is the best franchise out there that embodies the fantastical side of magic and shows it in the best possible light that you can put it on film and shows it in the most creative ways. The reason that I picked Half-Blood Prince is because I think in terms of literal magic and in terms of the magical properties that it introduces into the franchise, it introduces the most creative ones. Throughout the entirety of the franchise, Professor Snape was always the potions master, but we never really saw anything to do with that class or what he did. His involvement in the plot was always in other areas. With this, we have the character of Slughorn introduced, played by, I want to say it's Jim Broadbent, and we actually get to see what potions have and what potions can do and the effect that they can have on people, specifically the one they focus on is the love potion, and they introduce those attributes. And then obviously the biggest one, also a magical element that is super important to the plot of the Harry Potter films going on, is the introduction of the Horcruxes in this film, or the introduction of actually explaining what they are, which is this idea of somebody can take their soul and split a part of it off and insert it into an object as a way of trying to install this almost like a near invincibility into them. And we'd seen Horcruxes in the other films, but we didn't know what they were, and we didn't know the context of what they were. And the introduction of this idea and this plot point and the use of this dark magic not only adds context to other scenes in the franchise and parts of the franchise to give them a little more depth and interesting factor to them that they may not have had before, but it's also important to the plot going forward. And in terms of just straight magic in the film, so much is introduced in this movie. That's why I think it is the best movie about magic.
All right, good opening argument there by Aaron. Henry, we're hopping over to you for your opening.
All right, so when I think of a movie that is the best about magic, I think of, you look at magic as the core of the movie. So if you take that out, then it definitely affects the story, or maybe you don't even have a story. So I'm going with The Prestige, and that is a movie about two illusionists, which I know that's going to come up at some point. So they are illusionists, but that is the crux of, no pun intended, the crux of that movie. And it is about two illusionist magicians who are very competitive, and that is, they're trying to master their craft and get better as they go. It shows them, midway in their career. I wouldn't say they're early, because they are pretty good, but midway in their career, and then they end up become rivals, and then they become two of the best magicians in the world. And then once you get later into the movie, you see that actual a science fiction element comes into the movie, and that just affects the magic part of it, and it makes it even more interesting, because it actually shows that it's not just illusions, that there are magical elements into it. So it's not just fake stuff. It also not fake, but not just tricks. It is also actual magic, or at least attempt to go about that way. So it shows the competitive nature of magic, and it is the best part, because it shows why magic is actually important to these two characters, and why it is important to the audience to understand what magic is in this movie.
All right, sorry about that. My computer's lagging a little bit. So, it took me a while to unmute. All right, good opening arguments. We have the Half-Blood Prince from Aaron and the Prestige from Henry. We're going to have a 5-minute open forum. It's going to start when the first person starts talking, so whenever you are ready, I'll hit the start button.
All right, so since Aaron's muted, I'm going to take advantage of that. So,
God damn it.
Here's the thing with the Half-Blood Prince. It's not even the best movie in the franchise that is about magic. So when you're saying what is the best movie about magic, I think that's going to be the toughest part to go about. And also, for when you think of the Harry Potter franchise as a whole, even though the franchise is about magic, if you take the magic out of that franchise, you still have a decent coming-of-age franchise where you have good characters. You're developing the characters when they're from 11-year-olds all the way up to they're almost 17, 18 years old. So you still have a nice little John Hughes type of franchise where it's just a bunch of kids going through puberty, going through high school. You have sports, you have all that stuff. So even if you take the magic out of it, you still have a decent franchise. Whereas in my movie, you take the magic or illusions out of it, you don't have a story. It takes it away, because mine is the core of that movie, because you have two illusionists, two magicians going head to head, and that is their driving force moving forward.
If you pull the magic out of Harry Potter, you don't have a viable franchise, because let's face facts, nobody wants to watch 8 matches or 8 movies about puberty. We lived through that shit for 8 years. Nobody wants to watch 8 movies about it. The magic is the core of what propels the franchise, and all the drama and stuff around it is what assists helps grow the franchise and continue it. But it is about the magic. It is about Harry discovering magic in the beginning, and it is about the growth of magic throughout the movies. I'm not, what I was trying to say while I was muted, I'm not going to actually call you on the technicality of, oh, they're illusionists, because the fact is this question can be addressed in two ways. You can address it as magical fantasy, or you can address it as illusion and sleight of hand in the real world magic. So it's obviously like, there's no point in arguing that. It's a fair thing. But I'm curious, what is the movie that does magic better? Because you said, it's not even the one that does the best. What is the movie that does magic better?
So when you have the very first movie in Philosopher's Stone / Sorcerer's Stone, and that actually introduces magic, so it gives you that sense of awe and that sense of, wow, this is brand new. You have the very last movie in Deathly Hallows Part 2, where you actually have the magic. You dive deeper into the actual Horcruxes, because the Half-Blood Prince, it doesn't really explain the Horcruxes thoroughly. So you're introduced them, yes, but you're not actually fully inept what Horcruxes are. And then you also have movies like Prisoner of Azkaban, where you really dive into the transfigurations, and that is a lot cooler. And you have the I can't remember what it's called, but when you do the thing and you have the scary, whatever scares them, so whatever that box is, so you have stuff like that, and that is just a lot more interesting. So when you have the Half-Blood Prince, it definitely has interesting ideas, but you can definitely tell it is an arc movie, and it's not nowhere near the best in the franchise, and it's definitely not the best about magic, because it gets you into the concept of the Horcruxes, but it definitely doesn't utilize the concept as strongly as you would want, definitely compared to Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, when it actually dives deeper into the Horcrux concept.
I think it does explain the concept in a well enough way, idea of that it's explaining and introducing you to the idea of this is what somebody could do. And it does a great job in that movie, specifically of delving into the psyche of someone like Voldemort, because Voldemort is not directly in Half-Blood Prince. You never see, maybe with the exception of like a shot or something in like a montage thing, you never see Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort in that film. The portrayal of Voldemort is done through younger actors and younger portrayals, and you really dive into the psyche of what someone has to mentally be to want to explore this path and want to do this. And then you see the extent that he goes to, where they start to realize there ends up being like seven Horcruxes, 8 incidentally, with the accidental split into Harry. That's revealed later.
See, with that being said, you have the whole backstory of Tom Riddle that shows the kind of like the introduction of a villain. So it's more of like a villain origin story, and you can take the magic out of that, and it's not, like I said, it's not even diving deep into the actual concept of him setting up the Horcrux. It's more of like an origin story, or it's more of a build up to what you're going to find up in the Deathly Hallows.
But the Horcruxes are directly tied into Voldemort's character, because Voldemort acts and walks around like he is invincible, and that
but it's a setup, so it doesn't actually show the concept of magic, where you have the prestige, where the whole time you're setting up, you have the bird trick, you have the disappearing bullet, you have the transporting man, you have tricks throughout, you have Borden and Angier, you have them figuring out what the Asian man, how he does the bowl. You have Nikola Tesla and how he's going to set up the actual transporting man. I can't think of the name right now, but the actual science part of it. So you have all aspects from A to B. You have the going into the water. You have magic tricks all throughout the movie. So if you take any of those out, you don't have a movie. You don't have a competition between the two. And maybe you could say that that's a bad thing and that affects the movie. But honestly, because the question is, what is the best movie about magic?
All right. Aaron, we're going to go to you for closings. Sorry to cut you off there, Henry, but
no, you're right. That's the rules. We dig it.
Aaron, when you are ready for your closing argument.
Okay. I think the best movie about magic is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, because it comes right in the middle of a franchise that is entirely centered around magic, and it introduces a key, crucial, magical plot point to the franchise, and it exemplifies how it affects the villain and why it makes him think the way he does and why it makes him act the way he does, and it shows that progression over time through the younger actors. I also think in terms of the actual filmmaking itself, it's the first time that we really get to see any of the kids quote unquote by this point actually acting. A lot of the time when they're kids, it's just them reacting to things, and there's not a whole lot of actual dialogue and conversation and a lot of acting, whereas in this one, the movie isn't centered around the kids. A lot of this movie is centered around Daniel Radcliffe having to act off of Michael Gambon, which is the first time that anyone's actually had to do that, because the thing is, the movies have always had the adult actors there to help support the kids and make their performances better, but they've never actually had to really act one-on-one with somebody. The closest to that would have been in the fourth movie when Harry was acting off of Ralph Fiennes in the graveyard scene. But even then, a lot of that was Ralph Fiennes doing the dialogue. Harry didn't have very much, or Daniel Radcliffe didn't have very much to do except a lot of facial reactions and then the actual quick wand fight at the end. So it's the first time that we really get to see an acting performance out of them, or like a real actor's performance out of one of them. And I think he does a great job. And then you're talking about magic being throughout the movie. There is magic throughout the movie with this one constantly. Like I said earlier, they talk about the different potions and they kind of address that element that's never really been touched in the movies. We also see Harry get the book that was owned by Riddle, and we see him have the fight with Malfoy where he pulls out the spell and uses it and he has no clue what it's going to do, and it absolutely destroys Malfoy and injures him pretty badly in that scene. And it explores different darker magical elements that we haven't seen before, and it shows, like, there's always been in reference to this darker side of magic, obviously a lot of it coming with Voldemort, but this is the first time we really actually get to see some of this stuff in action. To talk about The Prestige real fast, The Prestige is a good movie. I think the actual plot of it becomes lost in a lot of, it starts trying to pull out the twists and the turns, and that's a part of the competition, and I think it kind of becomes a little muddled towards the end. And the thing with it is, like you're saying, oh, well, you can pull the magic out of Harry Potter and you'll still have a young adult coming of age franchise there. You could pull the magic out of The Prestige too. You could take the same basic idea of The Prestige of a competition between two guys and turn it into something else and still have a movie there. Your general idea for the movie is based around that. It's going to be half a movie, same as Harry Potter would be half a franchise, but you could still do it. So that point doesn't necessarily clear to me.
All right, good closing there by Aaron, and over to Henry for your closing.
So I think when you think of a movie as a whole, the best about magic, I think The Prestige shows a better one, and because it shows them getting better and progressing as magicians and illusionists, because it shows their growth. Because at the beginning, their whole thing with Michael Caine's characters, like, you can't just always do the same tricks. You got to really mix it up. You got to really get flashy and build, and that builds the competition between the two. When you have Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, it has the unfortunate concept of being in the middle of a franchise, so you're not going to have that throughout the entire. But I don't want to touch on that too much, but I will touch on the fact that in the Half-Blood Prince, like I will reiterate, it doesn't even cover the true. It doesn't dive deep into the Horcrux concept as much as it does in Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2, and also the concept that is in the entirety of 5, 6, 7, 8, the movies. The whole concept of the magicians doing, or the wizards doing their magic without even saying the spells, really takes the quote unquote magic out of it, because you're not even feeling it because they're not saying it. Whereas that was the quote unquote magic of the very first few films, because they're saying a lot of their spells, and it makes it feel as good. Because when you're going into the later films, they don't say it as much. So even you can break it down and say, like, once they get older that they're allowed to do that, but from an audience perspective, it kind of takes it away, and it just turns into spectacle, and it doesn't have that quote unquote magic that you would like to see, and that definitely takes it out of the movie. Plus, that movie you're talking about is the best acted. It is also one of the worst directed. Like, you can just the set of it is ugly, the choreography is ugly. It's just not as fun to watch. The pacing is really off, and you can tell it's a build-up movie. Deathly Hallows Part 1 may be a Part 1, but Half-Blood Prince feels like a 0.5. Like, it's lesser grade, and it also just, you can tell it's building up to something, and it just doesn't execute it as strongly as Part 1 and 2 of Deathly Hallows.
Alrighty, good fight there, guys. That was an interesting one. Let's see. So I think both of you had really good introductions, both of you introducing the points of your movie well. Aaron talking about the magical properties and going deeper into the Horcruxes, and, both of you kind of had a similar argument about how magic is the core of my movie. If you took it out, it wouldn't be the same. Both of you kind of said the same argument there. Which I agree. If you take the magic out of either of these movies, it doesn't work as well. You would still kind of have a coming-of-age story. You would still have sort of a competition between two people in sort of any kind of field. I think Henry in the open forum round, Henry attacked Aaron more, but I think Aaron also deflected a lot of those points very well, saying that it didn't dive deep into the Horcruxes because it was still trying to be get into the psyche of the villain. Both of you talked about the filmmaking aspects of your movie. I think the way I'm going with this one, I needed a little bit more against the Prestige earlier on. You got it in there in your closing argument, Aaron, and I sort of agree with some of the points about the lost in the muddled plot. I just needed to hear that a little bit earlier, so you could have expanded on that in your closing instead of just first bringing it up in your closing. So I'm going to give the first point to Henry on that one. So question number 2, I just want to make sure I have the right one in my head. All right, so we had a good fight number 1. We're going to go into question number 2. We thought it'd be fun to ask, what is the worst movie directed by Christopher Nolan? Christopher Nolan, obviously a well-respected director in the interwebs. Much of the interwebs think he is a god, but he may have had some few missteps here and there. We're going to talk about him right now. Aaron, we are going to you first.
Okay. All right, here we go. Basically, I have 1 point on this one, so I hope I can argue it well and it sticks. I'm going with the worst Christopher Nolan film is Interstellar. And the reason that I'm going with that one is because, to me, the weakest part of most of Christopher Nolan's films is emotion. Christopher Nolan doesn't do a great job in most of his movies at putting forth emotion. When you look at the, like what people would argue are his best films, The Dark Knight, a lot of the actual relationships are the weakest part of that film. Specifically in the first 2, when you talk about him and Rachel, it's the weakest part of the movie. No matter what actress you're switching in, it's the weaker part of that film. Whatever it is as a screenwriter, he doesn't do emotion the best, and it can sometimes come off as very overdramatic. Interstellar is a movie that at its core relies entirely on emotion working, down to the point of the message of the film is kind of, I'm obviously not saying it's verbatim, but the message of the film is kind of like, love will find a way. If you love somebody enough, you'll find a way to get back to them. And we have that whole bit at the end with the intergalactic alien bookshelf, which I don't hate as much as most people do. But the problem is the movie itself is built around emotion, and as a writer and as a director, I don't think Christopher Nolan does the best job at putting forth emotion in films. So a lot of this film comes off as very overdramatic, and it comes off as a little overdone, and I don't think it hits quite the right way that a lot of his other movies do. Because a lot of his other movies have emotion within it toned down. It's not the main point of the film. So even if it is a weakness, it never overpowers and it never quite hurts his films. In this one, it does, because the entirety of the film is built around you caring about the relationships. And I don't think as a screenwriter with the script and as a director with his actors, I don't think he was ever able to get any of the performances quite where he needed to make that work.
Alrighty, Aaron, going for the overdone emotion like my overdone steak I had last night. Henry, you're up for your opening.
Ooh, that sucks.
So when you think of the concept, what is the worst movie of somebody, and especially of a director who is well acclaimed and has a lot of good movies, let alone great movies from most people, you gotta just kind of really just look down at the basic and what quantifies something to be their worst movie. And sometimes their worst movie isn't even a bad movie, and sometimes their worst movie, and this could be a cheap shot, is their first movie. And that's why I'm going to go with Following from Christopher Nolan, because it's a movie that is just it's only, I think, like 78 minutes long. It's not that long, but it definitely is his first movie. You can just tell that the character development isn't quite there. The budget obviously isn't there. It's shot in black and white. You can tell that the acting isn't great, that he just either picked these guys up or it's his friends or something like that. You can just tell that the quality of the film is not there, and that is not a knock on the movie as a whole, because overall it is actually a really good movie. And because Christopher Nolan is one of the best directors working today, let alone of all time, it is one of those where it's like his worst movie is not necessarily going to be a bad movie. So Following is not a bad movie. It's just you can tell that it is not quite there, and it could be a cheap shot to say that, but the set design isn't there. It's very limited in scope. The sound, you can just tell the mixing isn't quite there. The acting, obviously, you can tell that the writing, that it had one of his early twists, and it is done well. But honestly, if he remade this movie, it would probably be one of the best movies of all time because the concept was there. But because it is early in his career as a writer and as a director, you can just tell it just wasn't finished and it wasn't established as strongly as it could be. So that is his worst movie, but doesn't always mean bad.
Alrighty, so we have Interstellar versus Following. We're going to have 5 minutes of open forum. I'm ready on the clock when the first person starts talking.
I'll let you go first this time since I went first last time.
All right. Fair enough. Okay, so my thing is with Following is maybe it's just the way that I look at things, but I don't see Following as his worst movie because the fact is when you know where it came from, the fact that it's as good as it is, it really shouldn't be that good. When you look at the fact that it's a movie that cost a couple $1,000s to make, it's an amateur writer, director, producer. He did the cinematography on the movie. It's all amateur work. It's cheaply budgeted. I remember reading at some point that he didn't have lighting equipment for the film, so it's all done on natural lighting. Like, when you look at this type of a movie, it has no right to be as good as it is. And I think the fact that Nolan had the raw filmmaking ability as both a writer, as a director, as a producer, and someone working on set to pull out that type of quality of a film, I think that contends that it wouldn't be his worst movie, because the fact is, it shows as a director, he is able to pull something out of nothing. Whereas Interstellar comes in the middle of his career, and it comes at a point where he is on top of the world. You know, he is coming off of the Dark Knight trilogy, which is considered one of the best trilogies of all time. He is coming off of movies like Memento, which, people looked at as this mind-bending storytelling changing type film. He is coming off of Inception a couple years before, which was this big smart blockbuster, and that and The Dark Knight back to back is one of these like the first real push in years where blockbusters should get pushed for Best Picture. The Dark Knight literally changed the Academy's rules.
Yeah, and that's why I want to start with that. So you have you have Following. It's like I said, it's not a bad movie. It's definitely his lowest because you could say as a filmmaker he's one of the best of all time because he's able to pull this off. But if you just really look at it, Following is just not as good. The acting is just not there. Even his second movie, you have Guy Pearce, you have Joey Pants, and you have Carrie-Anne Moss and Memento. He was able to direct them into good acting. So I mean, he has the capability of directing people into good acting. Because if you look at people like Joey Pants, he's kind of over the top, but he actually really brings that character to scope. So when you look at Following, you could just tell that it just wasn't there. He just didn't have the talent, and that's not a knock on Nolan as a filmmaker because it's the worst Nolan movie. It's not how what is he a good or bad director, or is he a good or bad filmmaker? So you just look at the worst movie, and it's just there. And you have movies like you have Interstellar. So before I even get onto your point, I want to say it is probably his best set. It's his most beautiful. It has the best sound design. Interstellar and Dunkirk are just hand in hand the two best sounding and best visually. So even if you look at that already just blows Following out of the water. And then you have the acting. You say it goes on emotion. That has it has the best arc out of any Christopher Nolan movie. You have Matthew McConaughey's character where he just only loves his daughter, and then he just wants to get back to his daughter. He's fighting for his family, and then it ends up fighting for humanity as a whole. So just that alone is a great arc. And then you build up to the whole emotion thing. When he has that, you say it's over the top. When you have that scene of Matthew McConaughey breaking down when he actually sees Jessica Chastain's character at his age, and he's just going crazy and he's breaking down and he's just so sad. That just gets me and everyone else emotionally at all times. If you have anybody, even the most Christopher Nolan haters, you can say that is just so well acted and is so well written. And then you have the effects that it has of not loving your son, where you have Timothée Chalamet's character building up into Casey Affleck's character and how it affects him, and it really just shows the darkness that you can have for neglecting your child. And then the final arc where it says the whole time he's been doing it to get back to Murph at the end, but his love has translated over to Anne Hathaway's character. So when he gets back to his daughter, it's like, okay, well, my love for you, it's cemented. My love for you is there, so now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go on to Anne Hathaway's character. I'm going to go and try and save her, because that's where his love is shifted. So the arc of that is not just his character, but it's also the concept of love and how love can change throughout your life, because especially, unfortunately, Murph was older than him, so that love was already cemented. She finally realized it. Took her a long time, but it finally realized it. So that emotional punch of, wow, my dad did this the whole time for me, and he did a great job. Now let's go over to Anne Hathaway's character, and let's go save her life. And it's a cliffhanger, yeah, be that as it may, but it just has that emotional punch and that great storyline and arc. So you say he's not good at writing that, but that's the whole movie. You just may not have understood it, that's fine, but that just is a whole emotional arc, and it shows great lessons of the effects of people from neglecting, and how you can not just love one person, love the other, or how you can shift love throughout time in your life.
No, I definitely understood what he was going for. I don't think it quite works. Is my opinion on it. I don't think that it works in the same way that if you'd put another director on that film, I think they probably could have executed it better, because I just think that some of the emotional stuff doesn't quite come off the way that it should. Like, the problem is, you're talking about the movie.
And time right there, but Aaron, it's your closing, so you can just continue.
Okay. In terms of, I don't think Following is his worst movie, because yes, Henry pointed out the fact that a lot of it is kind of amateur filmmaking. He didn't have the tools at his disposal that he had in his later career, and obviously those tools in his later career came from finding the success he did. But the fact that Following is as good of a movie as it is, with the little materials that he had to work with it, I think quantifies it as not being his worst film, because it shows that as a raw filmmaker, with only having the littlest amount of material that you could possibly have as a filmmaker, you can still make a product that is completely serviceable and good, and like the fact that it's watchable, let alone the fact that it's good to this day, when it's basically the equivalent of a film student film, shows that he had that raw talent to make film even at that younger of an age. And so I think that quantifies it as not being his worst movie. With Interstellar, I think the emotion in it, I understand what he's going for, and I understand the arc over the whole movie. I just don't think that it gets across the way that at least I would want it to during the entirety of the movie. And I think a lot of people felt that way, because the movie was very mixed. A lot of people didn't like it. So I think as a director, for somebody who had succeeded so well so many times before and made these mass appeal movies for people, as a director, to try and make a movie that is completely focused on emotion and have it hit the way that he did, it shows that it's a weakness in his directing tools. It shows that it is a weakness for him. And I think that's even more exemplified by the fact that it's followed up by Dunkirk, which in my opinion is one of his best films. And the movie, as a joke, is almost completely emotionless. There is not a lot of character to that film. There is not a lot of, you don't learn anything about 90% of the characters in that movie. The characters are used as tools to service the story he is trying to tell. And I think that makes for the best direction on him, because I don't think he can quite work character relationships and work love that well. And when the plot of your movie is entirely focused around love, that makes it an issue. And also, I didn't get to bring this up in the actual fight, so I don't know if it's going to hurt me or not. But to talk about the actual filmmaking, I do think it is one of the weaker made films. Again, I don't think all the performances are 100% there. You have actors in the later part of the film, some of the supporting cast, like Wes Bentley, and I forget the other guy's name, but the guys on the ship don't do that much. Topher Grace is in a chunk of this movie, and he doesn't do that much. And that's a waste of characters, and that's a waste of acting on screen by including characters that are kind of useless to the plot. I think the Matt Damon surprise cameo turnoff for 20 minutes was kind of useless to the story. I don't think it was needed for a movie that has a runtime as long as it has. I don't think you needed to divert the story entirely for 20 minutes just to include him and then kill him off and tie that up neatly and move on, because you really could have gone on without it and gotten to where you needed to get within the story. So I just think on a whole, it's built around this theme of love is the answer, and I don't think Nolan delivers that as well. And I also think for a movie that comes in the middle of his filmography, it is one of the weaker made films of his filmography.
Alrighty, strong in the closing there from Aaron. And Henry, what do you have for your closing?
So I'll start off with we're talking about the interstellar thing. So you keep on saying that love, the emotion wasn't there, and that could just be a personal thing for you. Because when you have, like I said, you have a character arc, and that is just one of the driving forces of emotion is through arcs. Excuse me, because that's how you're really going to relay that. So you have a character in Matthew McConaughey's who's kind of struggling with the concept of being a parent, being a single parent, because of the loss of his wife. He's dealing with the concept of you know a shortage and a potential depopulation and an effect of the population. Him not being an astronaut anymore and working with NASA. You're seeing that effect, and then he's growing into being brought back into NASA because he's doing it for his family, which is ultimately just for his daughter because that's what the love is. And then you see how the neglection of his son, it really affects him and turns him into violent and kind of just like dark and gritty and depressive. And then you have the growth of Jessica Chastain's character. She's living with that hatred all of her life because her dad said he never really said when he was going to be back, and then he's gone for so many years, and that just affects her. But then when she finally realizes why he did it, then she forgave him and she accepted it because she realized the true emotions of what it was. And sometimes you don't understand today why somebody does something, but later on you will, and that really shows the longevity of love and passion for your other people. And also you said like it has wasted characters. You have Matt Damon's character. It showed the effect it has on him for making that choice for NASA because he loved his job and he loved his country, but then ultimately it screwed him out in the end. So he's willing to backstab people and murder people to just get back. It showed the selfishness and the true character of somebody. You have Tars, one of the best written characters. Honestly, this is probably the best droid that is even counting Star Wars movies. It's one of the best droids ever written because of how funny it is and how much weight it has. It shows sacrifice how it's going to help. It shows character, and it shows that the fact that you can have emotion for a droid is very interesting. And then moving to following, if the question was what is the best concept, then yes, following would not lose because it has an amazing concept. If it asks what is the biggest accomplishment for a director, then yes, following would not lose because it definitely is a big accomplishment given the stakes. But the question is, what is the worst movie? And it's unfortunate because, like I said, it's not a bad movie, but it's definitely the worst directed. It is the worst looking, the worst cinematography, the worst acting. And honestly, even though it has a really good story, you can tell that it's not as tight because him and his brother Jonathan Nolan are definitely earlier in their careers, so it's not as tight as you want to be as far as character development. So because it's only 78 minutes or so, early or barely an hour 15, it's like an early Charlie Chaplin film with no dialogue. So the fact that it shows it just doesn't have it's quite there. So it's a good movie. It's probably a great movie, but when you think of the worst Nolan movie, it is definitely just the worst Nolan movie. So Nolan, he's good.
All right, Nolan is good. That's Henry's mantra. Yeah, this one is difficult. For a little bit of fact checking, let's see here. Obviously, Rotten Tomatoes is not the be-all, end-all as far as scoring movies, but Interstellar has a 71%, Following has a 79%. These are critic ratings.
I will say that Interstellar is 71 fresh, where Following isn't. So I didn't want to bring that up because maybe not enough people saw.
Interstellar is certified fresh.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Both of them are fresh, but
certified fresh. So it had
Interstellar is 2 hours and 45 minutes. 2 hours and 49 minutes. Following.
That's counting credits.
Yes.
I have to
under 80 minutes. So if you're looking for a movie to throw on for movie night and you just looking for something a little longer versus something shorter, that could be a factor. Both of you made good arguments here. I think Aaron, actually both of you didn't have a ton of support for your own argument. Both of you had points. Aaron talking about the emotion, the love, how it's overdramatic, how it's poor execution, how there's not really a lot of explanation for why it's fell off a little bit of the short end, considered where it is in his career. Henry, you were talking about how the budget, the acting, the quality of the movie itself. So both of you had supports for your own argument. Aaron was sort of talking. Man, this is hard. I think, Henry, you said that the visual and sound design of Interstellar is really, really good. You gave specific examples about character arcs, which is something I liked, as far as Chastain, as far as McConaughey, Damon. Even I think you were the one who talked about Casey Affleck. Aaron, you were talking about how you understand where following came from as far as the budget, how it's almost a film student movie. He was able to pull something from nothing. So I think both of you actually had really good counter arguments against why the other person's was bad. I think I'm going to give this one to Henry because there were extremely specific character examples. Aaron, I did really, really like how you were like, well, it's still a good movie. You understand where it came from. That's a really, really good argument. But I just think there were a few more specifics from the movie from Henry. All right. So we're going to go into our question 3 today. This is another interesting question, I think. We are going to ask, what is the best James Wan movie? James Wan, obviously a director, producer, writer, was specifically more well-known in the horror world. But he's got a lot of good movies. So we're going to ask, which one is his best? Henry, we're starting with you this time for your opening.
So when you think of James Wan, you think of a horror director. And honestly, you're just going to be like, all right, out of amongst, within his filmography, what is his best movie and what is his best horror movie? So you can definitely go about it in different ways, or maybe not if you look at my opponent and his choice. So when you think of what is the best James Wan movie, you want to go about what utilizes his strength as a filmmaker, as a director, and as just a person of horror. So I went with The Conjuring because it showed that he has the patience to set up characters in a horror movie, which is very rare in the horror franchise, because if you think of horror franchises or horror movies, they have some of the worst written characters and worst acted characters, but The Conjuring arguably is one of the best acted horror movies ever, because you have Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. They're building up these real life characters. The fact that they're able to embody these quote unquote true life people, the fact that you're able to have child actors not be annoying, and you're actually able to see the fear within these kids, and them not being annoying, or them not seem like they're pandering to the child audience, or just seeming like they're just a clickbait where they're just here to get snatched up. The darkness and the concept of The Conjuring itself is just glowing throughout. So once you get to that final end, where it's just you're really seeing The Conjuring, the ghost really go at it. It built up, it earned it. So I felt like it was just he was at the height of his powers as a director, let alone as a horror director, and he just really enveloped what his potential, and just shows that the movies before were good, but this is his best.
Alrighty, Conjuring for watching a ghost go at it. Henry, you're up. Or Henry just went. Aaron, you're up.
Good call.
Henry can go again if he'd like.
Right.
All right. I'm going to preface this with I'm not a big horror guy. Haven't seen very many of his movies because I don't see a lot of horror unless I'm told it's actually really, really good, and usually I don't watch it in theater. It's just me. So I went with literally the only movie on his filmography that's not horror, Furious 7. So let's pull something out. All right. Furious 7 is a part of this huge action blockbuster franchise. And James Wan actually had a difficult job stepping into this movie because, first off, it's the first non-horror film he's directed. It's also the biggest budget film he's directed. So as a director, stepping into that world and stepping into that type of setting for the first time is something that's really, really huge. You're also coming off of a franchise that has had its last 4 films directed by the same director, Justin Lin. And so what that means is the Fast and Furious films developed under Lin. First off, they came back from being a shit franchise into a good franchise under good as in like a fun franchise under Justin Lin. And they developed a look and they developed a style under Justin Lin, his directorial style. And so the thing is, Wan has to come in now and not only try and make a movie that is still his own, but he also has to try and genuinely make a movie that that fits within the franchise and fits within the tone of the franchise, and not try and make something that breaks the feel of the franchise, because this franchise does have a lot of fans. And so that's a hard job for a first-time director stepping into this movie. And then you also have to look at the fact that during the production of this film, Paul Walker died. And as a first-time director handling your first blockbuster, to have that happen to you is a huge, to have one of your leads pass away on you is a huge blockade in terms of filmmaking. And I think it is James Wan's best movie because he stepped into a franchise, and I think he pulled something more heartfelt out of this franchise than I think they'd actually done before, specifically with the stuff with Paul Walker and his character in the franchise. It really does feel like a natural send-off movie to his character more than just, oh, these are the because the thing is, obviously a lot of that stuff was rewrites, and some of that stuff was done because you can't have him in the franchise anymore. And I think as a director, there's just so much stuff that was thrown at him more than his previous films. And I think he handled it, and he put out a really surprisingly good film, not just a dumb action movie, but a surprisingly good film that still fit within the action tone franchise that Fast and Furious had set before it.
Alrighty, Furious 7 versus The Conjuring, open forum period. I got 5 minutes on the clock whenever you're ready.
All right, so what I want to touch on Furious 7. So when you have this movie, first of all, I want to say that saying that a movie is serviceable doesn't mean it's his best movie. Yes, he did a fine job because he's a good filmmaker, but that doesn't mean it's his best movie. And B, you said it yourself, it's a serviceable movie. He did a fine enough job given what he was given. So you can just tell that the heart and passion. So you can look at the semantics. It's not a James Wan movie, and it's also not the best movie he's been a part of. So either way, it doesn't fit the question of this. It's also not the best movie in the franchise because you can just tell that it just wasn't there, whether it's not his heart and passion to go into the franchise. Honestly, the only reason that Furious 7 worked is because of the running the coattails of Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6, because of how well that Justin Lin transitioned this franchise into an action franchise and getting The Rock into it. It's more about the characters. It's not about the direction, because if you looked at the concept of the direction, the fact that James Wan allowed The Rock to bust out of a cast with his fist just shows that it's a B movie, and he's not taking it seriously. So if you're looking at the seriousness, you want to look at The Conjuring and how serious it took, because you think of The Conjuring, Paranormal Activity. So that could been right in the coattails of Paranormal Activities, and it could have been a joke, or it could have been like a spoof, or it could have been a ripoff, but it wasn't. It was an original idea with or his unoriginal ideas done in a twist way to where it's its own concept. So at no point, like, you're like, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, I've never seen it done like that. Because that's James Wan as a filmmaker, because it's shown that he's at the height of his powers as a filmmaker and as a horror filmmaker and as a filmmaker in general. If you want to talk, I can keep going.
Yeah, fuck it. You're right. Give him the point. Honestly, I've only seen 2 movies from James Wan, Conjuring and Furious 7. That's the better one. Give him the point. He said everything I would have said if I was fighting for that. Fair enough. As a judge, I'm not pulling this shit on longer than I have to. He won that. I tried.
I will give you credit, but yeah, I tried.
Even in my own head, I'm like, wow, this got bad.
Honestly, Aaron, I really liked your opening argument.
No, you did a good job. You were able to BS that pretty good. I will give you credit.
I couldn't get further than that.
There was an uphill battle to fight. So if Aaron is conceding the point, Henry's going to go up 3-0.
I was worried when Manning was originally in this, having to go up against Conjuring 2, because A, I hadn't seen it yet, and B, it was definitely mixed online which one's better, so I was really nervous about that one.
Saw is the answer to that question.
I've only seen Conjuring and Furious 7, so when Conjuring got taken, I was like, well, that answers that question.
I only saw it just for this debate. So when we had to delay this production, I was like, yes, I could watch Conjuring.
I'm pretty sure when we were picking answers, like, that's one of the first ones you messaged, Aaron. You're like, Conjuring. And I'm like, oh, it was already taken. You're like, shit.
Yeah, basically. Because horror is not my thing. I only saw The Conjuring like 2 years after it came out because everyone's like, no, it's really fucking good. So I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And it was really fucking good. Better than Furious 7. But everything I said about Furious 7, I believe. I wasn't like bullshitting it. I just couldn't win.
Everything you said about that.
He bust out of a cast and he stomped on the pavement and fucked up the road. Like, go fuck yourself. Movie magic.
Hey, the Hulk, The Rock is the Hulk saving on a CG budget, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's the next Hulk should be The Rock, just like spray painted green.
All right.
Let's
get this over with, boys.
Yeah, let's go into the fourth question. This is an interesting one. This is a little bit more of a fun. This isn't best, worst, anything like that. This is a little bit different. Question 4. What movie character would you least want to bring home to meet your parents? So there's at least 10 movie characters out of any movie ever. So you had a couple options.
Just a couple.
Any movie character, what one would you least want to bring home to meet your parents? Henry, we're going to you first.
All right, so I really want to emphasize the wording of this question. Who would you want to least bring home to your parents? And I'm thinking of a viable option to actually bring home to your parents, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your lover, whether it's some random guy you met in the street and you're like, oh, well, I feel sorry for this guy. Let's bring him home. And I went with somebody who's going to really make your parents judge you as a parent, not just as adults, as a parent. Because they're gonna see this person, they're like, oh, this guy's a bad example. He smokes marijuana. He's a drinker. He's someone who's lazy. He walks around in a robe and jellies. He's on a Monday not looking for a job. He's out mooching. You can tell he just wants to bowl. He's crazy. And I'm talking about the dude from The Big Lebowski. He is somebody that, like, if this is legitimately your best friend in high school or in college, or honestly, if this guy's your best friend in your 20s and he's meeting your parents, then that's just creepy. But if you're taking him home to meet your parents are going to judge the shit out of you because they're going to be like, oh, what are you going to tell me next? You quit your job? Oh, what are you going to tell me next? You dropped out of high school? You know what I'm saying? It's going to follow nothing but bad news because this guy, it's going to turn into a point where he's talking to your parents and they're going to start saying something like, oh, hey, Jeffrey, did you look for a job this weekend? Fuck it, man. Like that's all he's going to say. Like, he's not going to take anything seriously. He's just going to be a bad example for your parents. And that is not who you want to bring home to your parents in any aspect of life, because you're bringing him home for a reason, whether it's to sit down dinner or whether it's to introduce him as a lover, as a friend, however you want to go about it. You just do not want to introduce this person to your parents because it's setting a bad example and your parents will judge you and potentially shun you from the family.
That's just like your opinion, man.
Exactly.
Aaron, for your opening.
Okay. So for my open argument, I went with another character who's kind of similar in some ways. Really, I went with Deadpool because okay, there, honey. I went with Deadpool because, like, when you look at the context of Deadpool in those movies, Deadpool is not somebody you want to bring home and introduce to your parents. First off, Deadpool's fucking ugly. Like, if you bring him home and show him to your parents and be like, this is who I'm hanging out, like Henry brought up, so I'll keep it on that. Henry brought up the context of, what if this person is your lover? If you brought Deadpool home as your lover, your parents would go, what the fuck is wrong with you? Pull something better. Like, just physically unappealing. Now let's get to his personality. Also unappealing. He is constantly using curse words and sex phrases and all sorts of inappropriate language, which most parents do not like and do not want in their household. And if you have younger siblings, they would not want you bringing someone like that around. He is constantly making these dated references and fourth wall jokes, which would not be as funny if it's not in a movie in which we know Ryan Reynolds has a shit career outside of that movie. And the thing is, like, you wouldn't want to, because if you brought that person home, first off, like, your parents would be asking you, how the fuck did you get involved with an X-Men reject? Like, where did your life take you that's who you're hanging around with and that's who you're spending your time with? But then that could also lead to other questions, because the fact is, Deadpool's a mercenary. Deadpool travels the world and kills people. So are you the Dopinder of the real world? Are you his taxi driver that's now having a murderous rage? And it would make your parents start to question your mental sanity for wanting to be around this person.
All right, this is a great argument. I want a buddy cop movie with these two, but that's not the question right now.
That was a question at one point.
Open forum period. We are going to have 5 minutes on the clock whenever you two are ready.
So I want to start off by saying, if you are legitimately bringing Deadpool over as your lover and your parents judge him for their looks, they're assholes. So that's just on them, because if you're bringing him home as a lover, they should judge you. They should judge you based on how you feel. If you're truly bringing this guy over to meet your parents, then they're like, oh, then good for you. Let's get to know him despite his ugly mug. And you say he has dated references. That is perfect for dad jokes. He is going to bond the fuck out of your dad, and they're just going to make a bunch of dad jokes, and they're going to laugh. And then he's going to say, things. If you've noticed, he's very respectful around women, because the only women we see him around is Vanessa and Teenage Negasonic Teenage Warhead. And even the things he says around Negasonic Teenage Warhead are pretty brought down to a level because, you know, he's definitely he's not G-rating it or nothing, but he's definitely bringing it down because you can show he has respect for women. Even as a character, he's trying to be cool. So if he's coming over to meet your parents, he's going to bring that respect, because look at how he acts around Vanessa. When he actually truly cares about somebody, he takes it seriously and he actually shows love and emotion, and he actually shows it now. Otherwise, on the very contrast, if you're just coming over to be a friend, then that's just your fault, because why would you bring somebody over knowing that he's going to be an asshole? Whereas mine, if I'm befriending the dude, it's because I genuinely just like hanging out with this guy, or I like bowling with this guy, and I'm actually bringing over my friend. And then my parents are going to judge him for being a stoner. My parents are going to judge him for not having a job. My parents are going to judge him for used to being a roadie for Metallica. You know, there's stuff like that. So that's on me. That's on him as a character meeting my parents, versus you bringing home Deadpool. That's on you, because that's you putting your parents in danger too.
Anyone who brings home somebody to meet someone, it's on them because you want that introduction to happen. If you didn't bring the dude home to meet your parents, then they would never know that you're friends with a stoner who bowls and doesn't have a job. Like, they wouldn't know that this guy exists in your life if you don't tell him to your parents. Also, my parents are assholes. They probably would judge somebody for their looks, but that's not the argument. Second off, it just... Also, with Deadpool brings such a more extreme danger level that could lead to that judgment. Like, yeah, the dude's a stoner and he's lazy, but like on the up and up, most of his life is just chilling out and not doing very much. And yeah, that's like, if you brought that home to your parents, they'd be like, what's wrong with you? What do you see in this person that's just trying to mooch off of you and get through life by living off of you? But in the end, like, he's kind of harmless. Like, obviously, in the context of the plot of the film, he goes on this adventure that could cause harm to somebody. But in his normal everyday life, the dude just wakes up, throws a robe on, and throws a bowling ball. He's not actually that harmful to anybody, with the exception of the fact that, maybe he gets you addicted to pot if you can become addicted to pot.
So talking about that with Deadpool, though, if you're going to be friends with Deadpool, you're either special forces and you know him from his Wade Wilson days, or you just met up with him and there's no real reason for him to meet your parents, because you want him to be a secret. You want him to, you know, be on your side.
Why is the dude meeting your parents? Why are you bringing the dude home to meet your parents? Same thing.
Because he's my best friend. At some point, no matter how terrible your friends are, you're always going to have them meet your parents, whether, you know, it's awkward or it's not. If
Deadpool's my best friend, then you bring him home to meet the parents.
If Deadpool's legitimately your best friend, think about his relationship with Dopinder. When do they hang out outside of the cab? They don't, because they have become friends, but they don't actually hang out. They just have a quote unquote working relationship. Actually, that's not true. If you see Deadpool 2, they are in more locations than just that cab. Yeah, but it's all about missions. They're not actually hanging out and they're not having a beer. Whereas me and the dude, we're hanging out having a beer.
That's in the context of the films.
Yeah, but that's just that's common sense, though. You picked a character who you're not actually going to want to hang out with outside of a mission or outside of actually movie-related stuff. So it's not going to really put you in a situation to where you're going to hang out with your parents.
From my point of view, Deadpool's an entertaining character. Deadpool's a character where even when he's on a mission, he is cracking up. He is making jokes.
So if he's an entertaining character, you want him to meet your parents because you're going to make them laugh. You're going to try and impress them. He's going to tell dad jokes. He's going to tell references. He's going to flirt with your mom. If you think about moms like to be flirted.
Most parents don't want that type of person around. They don't want that type of person in your life. And when you think about the stuff that he says is highly inappropriate. Yes, he is respectful to the people that he loves, but in the movie we only see him ever being really respectful.
But if you're bringing him around your parents, you have you have a platonic relationship to where he loves you and he respects you. He's going to respect your parents. Does he? Because he has friends in those movies. He is friends with Weasel. He is friends with Dopinder. But he doesn't have a whole lot of respect for him and have respect for the things that they say. They don't have that respect back for him, and that's the relationship that they have. But there's no precedence that Deadpool has respect for anyone in this world outside of Vanessa. And Vanessa's dead, which means he has no respect for anybody. Exactly. So that means you're putting your parents in a shitty situation. Because imagine if they judge his looks, or if they judge his life, then you're putting them in danger.
You can go back and forth.
No more spoilers. Time's up. That movie came out less than a month ago.
You didn't say much.
Hey, if the end credit scene's on Instagram, people know what happens. It's okay.
Sure. All right. So, let's go to closing arguments. We're going to Henry first for your closing.
All right. So I just want to reiterate like what I said, just to put it in the context. So if you're actually going to risk bringing Deadpool home, and if you're actually having a friendship or a relationship with him, then that means he is emotionally attached, and he's actually going to really tone down his antics and his character. and when he does that, he's going to get to know your dad, and he's going to say references, and it's going to be dad jokes, and your dad's just going to laugh. He's going to flirt with your mom, and that's just going to really humble her, and it's really going to make her feel good. Whether she thinks he's ugly as fuck or not, that's still all. At the end of the day, women like compliments and women like attention, so he's going to provide that. He's also going to show that he's taught you some skills, because if you guys are friends, he's either giving you life lessons, whether they're appropriate or not. He's at least showing. So it at least shows he has your best interest at heart, even if it is not the actual good intention or actual appropriate. At least he's showing he's trying. Whereas when you're with the dude, he's just going to teach you how to smoke pot. All you want to do, if you're like, hey, I want to go to work, yeah, but man, I want to bowl. Like, he's just really bringing you down, and he's just not an appropriate person to bring home to your parents. Because if you're bringing him home as a buddy, which is definitely a viable option, to bring home a friend over to dinner to meet your parents, the conversation is going to be boring, because all he's going to want to do is talk about smoking weed or bowling. So already there, he doesn't have anything he doesn't have anything in common with your parents, so the conversation is going to be boring. It's not going to be interesting. They're not going to relate to him at all. At least with Deadpool, he can try and be funny, because it shows like with comedy, he's gonna split up the awkward silences. He's gonna try and provide entertainment, and if he's actually being appropriate and not trying to murder your parents, which would be a viable, a definite potential option if he's actually meeting somebody, odds are he's gonna try and kill them, or at some point he's gonna snap. So if he doesn't do that, at least he's gonna be funny and he's gonna provide entertainment. Whereas the dude, he's just terrible influence.
All right. Solid closing there from Henry. Aaron, for your closing argument.
If you bring Deadpool home as a buddy or as a lover or whatever context you are bringing Deadpool home to your parents for, your parents are going to judge you, and they're going to start worrying about you, because the fact of the matter is Deadpool has a very volatile personality. Deadpool is mean and disrespectful to everybody he's around. And yes, he does it in a comedic way that's funny, so it makes it easier on people, but that's still who he is. Like, the fact of the matter is, he spends the entirety of those two films consistently making fun of people, and he does have the ability to make it funny, and he has the ability to make fun of himself too, but that's what he's doing. Like, if you took the comedy away, Deadpool's just a bully. Your parents don't want you around that type of person. Second off, Deadpool is a mercenary. Deadpool is somebody who goes on worldwide missions and is killing people, and all of Deadpool's friends, as shown in the films, are involved in that in some way, with the exception of Vanessa, who stays at home. With the exception of Vanessa, all of his friends are involved in his missions and assist him and help him in some way, which means if you are Deadpool's friend, you are helping him with a mercenary mission in some way, and that is going to make your parents question why you want to hang out with this person. It's going to make them question who you are as a person, and that's not what you want. And the fact is, the dude, yeah, okay, you're going to have a boring conversation. You're going to have, like, okay, he wants to talk about weed and get stoned and go bowling. Sure. But the fact of the matter is, Deadpool is harmful. The dude is harmless. He is a stoner who doesn't do very much with his life. And sure, your parents would wonder what led you to be friends with that person. But at the end of the day, the dude is not going to flip out and pick up a bowling ball and strap a blade to it and swing it and chop off your head and then fucking stick his dick in your neck hole that's cut off. Like, that's something that Deadpool would do. Whereas, the dude's not going to do that. He's just going to sit there. He's going to laugh. He's going to be high most of the time, so he'll probably be out of it a little bit. And he's just going to be himself. Yeah, you're not the ideal person to bring home to your parents, but it's not that big a deal if you do, because they're not going to judge you. With Deadpool, you are bringing home a murderer. You are bringing home the top-of-the-line asshole, and you are bringing home somebody who could have a negative influence on a real strong negative influence on your family's opinion of you. And the fact is, as much charisma as he has, charisma is not going to save who Deadpool truly is. Deadpool is a horrible person.
Alrighty, good argument there. That was a good one. Both characters that I don't think you would want to bring home to your parents. The question was, which movie character would you least want to bring home to your parents? So this isn't like a guarantee that they are coming over. It's why shouldn't they? I think that's the way that you guys sort of tried to frame it a little bit. I think based mainly on the point that Aaron made he made it in the open forum, and then he reiterated it in the closing argument. He said that, ultimately, the dude, while it may not be an ideal character to bring home, he's harmless. Deadpool might kill your family and do terrible things with their bodies. I think Aaron gets the point on that one. So we're going to go into the speed round. For those of you watching, just to recap for the competitors, how this is going to work is I'm going to name a question. The competitors are going to have to shout out their answer very quickly. Whoever answers first is going to have to speak first and gets to argue for their point. We're going to have 30 seconds of them arguing and then 15 seconds rebuttals each time. And questions for you two? I think I pretty much said it all. Perfect. All right. So speed round 1. Get ready to shout your answers out. This is another little fun one. What movie character would have the best podcast?
Deadpool.
Star-Lord.
Alrighty. Henry going Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy, and Aaron going Deadpool from X-Men. Deadpool, sorry.
And X-Men.
Yeah.
And X-Men.
And X-Men. Well, all right. So, Aaron, you're arguing first. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the clock and write down as fast and furious as I can. Aaron, you are up 30 seconds.
Like I said in my previous argument, Deadpool is a person that is full of pop culture references. He is extremely funny, and that's what would make a good podcast. The point of a podcast is to entertain somebody. You could put Deadpool on a topic, and he could sit there forever coming up with comedic banter and coming up with the jokes to make people laugh and entertain people. Then you take the creative characters and personalities he has in his life and put them on that podcast with him, a la kind of like the Schmoes No Show. Imagine a podcast of Deadpool and Colossus going back and forth with each other, and the entire time Deadpool's just trying to mentally break Colossus to the point where he acts like.
All right, Henry, 30 seconds.
So if you have a podcast with Star-Lord, he's really going to talk about all of his old 80s references, and that's going to be fun. And then when he really gets experience, he's really going to start getting enveloped in the new culture, and he's really going to start having a lot more fun to talk about, and it's really going to expand it because he doesn't know about it. He's going to research, he's going to have a lot of fun. Deadpool, he's more about slapstick, and he's more about gags, so a lot of his stuff that you're not going to be able to visually see, the jokes aren't going to make sense, and it's more just going to be, like you said, bullying, and it's not going to be as funny. He's not a stand-up comedian. He's more of a situational comic, and it's not as funny in non-visuals than it is visually seen.
Right there. All right. 15 seconds, Aaron.
Would be entirely set in the past, and that's the problem with it, is the fact that it would make it extremely dated. Star-Lord hasn't been to Earth since he was pulled in the 80s. He doesn't know anything about modern culture, and if you're in space, you don't know what's happening, you don't know what to research, and hence it wouldn't be relevant. It would just be Star Wars reflecting on things from his childhood.
All right, and Henry, 15 seconds.
So we know that 80s are very nostalgic, and nobody talks about that today, so that's going to bring a new audience because it's just something new. Deadpool, he's just either going to be moping about Vanessa or he's just going to be saying dick jokes the whole time, and it's just going to get old really quick. And very inappropriate, and it's going to be very violent, or he's not going to be able to say stuff.
All right. All right, so that's the time for that question. We have Star-Lord versus Deadpool. Both of you started talking about pop culture and how they're going to be funny and it's entertaining for the audience. Henry talking a little bit more about 80s references and how he would have to research new culture and how that could be fun for the new audience. Aaron talking about how maybe the 80s references would all just be irrelevant, but then Henry talking about how it would be nostalgic, not irrelevant. Henry talking about how it's just going to be situational comedy and dick jokes. Oh, man. I really liked what Aaron was saying about bringing guests on, but I still think Henry had a better argument against Deadpool as far as it's just going to be bullying and slapstick humor. And how the 80s can be nostalgic instead of just dated. So I'm going to give that point to Henry and the win.
Let's go.
Deserved.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
I would definitely listen to a Deadpool podcast, though. 110%. Absolutely.
Deadpool and Joe Rogan. That would be great.
Alrighty, so Henry is going to take the win here. He's going to continue on down the road towards the title. Aaron, obviously, still, I believe, after this, still has a positive record, so he should still be all right. Let's just do plugs quick if you guys have them. Henry, where can we find you online?
Well, as you guys know, this is Movie Battleground on the Worldwide Movie Game Network, so I'm one of the main guys over at There Will Be Trivia, so you could always see me there. Potentially, you're going to see me, Robert, and the rest of the clerks. We're going to be start doing our web series of our top 100 and other shows for clerks-related stuff over on Henry Confidential, and then just make sure you join the Worldwide Movie Games Facebook group, and along with the Movie Battleground group and the Full Metal Trivia group, because we just have a lot of content there that we're really building up, and we're really trying to network and expand our shows.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Aaron?
I do the salesman hat thing enough. I'll let Henry and Robert take care of that. You guys can follow me on Instagram. Not that I'm ignoring it. Definitely do everything that they're going to say and already said. Yeah, follow me on Instagram at Aaron T. Connole. Definitely not my best day here. It would be funny that the guy who judges the most is not the best at this, but, you know, preparation and whatever. Time gets in the way, and I don't have time to prepare for things. And I picked Furious 7. Seriously, what the fuck is wrong with me? It's okay. You can say it. At least I'm not hashtag Stegosaurus Rex. Have a great day, guys.
Aaron is correct on that. And don't worry, Aaron. I have no wins in this league, and I judge the second most often, so it's fine. So, obviously, me personally, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at RBRTPRKR98. It's my first and last name, no vowels plus a year. Other than that, please join all of the Facebook pages. That's at Worldwide Movie Games Network, at Movie Battleground, at Full Metal Trivia, all of the respective things to make sure you're up to date with everything in the Worldwide Movie Games, including Movie Battleground. Make sure you drop a like and comment on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the Movie Battleground YouTube channel so you can make sure to stay up to date on all of the videos from all of the great movie aspects of this community. Other than that, I think that's about it. I think I hit everything. So make sure you check us out next time on the Movie Battleground, and we'll see you later. Thanks.